Good afternoon, Dr. Rex.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon.
So we will begin the session in another 7 minutes. Can you check your camera settings and also?
Come again. Come again. You're having an
I
echo.
said, sir, can you check your camera settings?
It's fine. My camera setting is fine.
Yes. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, sir. Sir, can you shift the screen a little bit towards your side, the way it was done yesterday?
What
Just
do you
the
mean?
camera. Yeah, just a little.
That's it.
1 second, sir. Yeah, better, sir. That's fine.
Okay.
So I have given you the co-host rights. You can share your screen once we give you a go ahead. First, Supriya will be there to introduce. Yeah. Just
It's fine. Understood.
Can you hear me? Yeah, I guess you can.
Yeah, I can hear you, Supriya.
Thank you, sir. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the webinar series, Bringing Women Back to Work. On behalf of Lincoln University of Business and Management, I would like to welcome all of you. My name is Supriya Bangar. I'm part of the academics and research team here, and I will be your host for this afternoon. At the start, a brief introduction to our organization. Lincoln University started its journey in 2014, and since then has provided quality education to numerous students from different parts of the world. We believe that good quality education should be available to all who are willing to learn at any age, and hence our programs are specifically catered to working professionals. We offer graduate and postgraduate courses with emphasis on hands-on practical skill development and building confidence so that our students have greater employability and are able to face challenges that may come their way in their professional lives. We are proud to say that women make up a large part of our student base. They have played an integral role in our growth, not only as an educational institution, but one that strives for positive social change. So it was only natural that on the occasion of International Women's Day, Lincoln University took upon itself to play a small but important role towards contributing to encouraging women's active participation in professional setups, leadership, and decision-making. According to the UN data from 2020, women remain one of the least utilized resources in the world today. Better educational outcomes and economic growth still have not translated into better or more jobs for women, or to enable them to return to the workplace after leaving once the shifts of biology and social roles come to the forefront. We hope that today's webinar, whose topic is communication in business, will not just inspire, but empower you with communication skills essential to survive in today's competitive professional environments. Before I introduce the speaker, I would like to go through the flow of the webinar. So today we will be we have started at 2:30. I've given you an introduction. Our speaker is Dr. Rex Bakara, whom I will introduce to you shortly. He will be speaking from 2:35 to 3:50 p.m. From 3:50 p.m. to 3:55 p.m., the floor will be open for your questions, which Dr. Rex will be answering. And from 3:55 to 4 p.m., I will be closing the webinar. So without further ado, let me just introduce our speaker today. He is Dr. Rex Bakara. He has 2 doctoral degrees, a PhD in management research with a focus on organizational development and human resource management, and another PhD in philosophy. Amongst his many, many achievements, Dr. Rex is the recipient of the OFW Bayani Hero Award, the highest award given to a Filipino expatriate by the Department of Foreign Affairs through the Philippine Consulate here in the UAE. He's one of the most influential Filipinos in the Gulf. He was voted one of the most influential Filipinos in the Gulf for the years 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019, and 2020 by Ilustrado magazine. And he has been featured in College Times as an extraordinary inspirer of students. So Dr. Rex, we are proud to have you with us today. I call upon you to start the webinar. Please unmute yourself, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Supriya. And welcome again to those who were around yesterday. And for those who are new, thank you very much for being with us. And as I always say, It is always exceptional and it's always inspiring that you continue to enhance yourself, internally motivating yourselves to become, as again, I say it over and over, because we're persons of improvement and flourishing, to become better versions of yourselves through continuous study, of course. I will be sharing my PowerPoint presentation. And yesterday, we stopped at the PowerPoint presentation. We stopped at the topic about how to make and how to design an effective PowerPoint presentation. And this afternoon, we'll be studying culture and negotiation skill. Let me give you some insights on, give me a second. Okay, let me give you some insights on cross-cultural communication in an increasingly globalized workplace. Globalization presented a challenge. It changed the way people conduct business. This is why people, you must understand to effectively communicate with others from a different culture. Learning to understand different societies, their nuances, the different cultures will help you, your organization, communicate issues as they arise. And it is also important to understand what causes these barriers in communications, these problems, and of course, to find solutions to effectively and efficiently communicate. Let us, as a contextual background, take a look at the importance of communication, considering the variety, the variance in culture. As an introduction, here is what culture is as defined by people from different cultures, of course. I'll be showing to you as a background this particular video because it is important to understand and study the nuances of culture, because this is where the world is going. And of course, many companies, big ones, small ones, starting ones, okay, would even fail due to their inability to understand people, to communicate properly to different cultures. So knowing the verbal and the nonverbal cues are also important. So what is culture? This will set as a foundation to my talk for this afternoon. Let me just share this to you. Okay. I will be sharing this.
Well, that's a good question.
Life.
Worldview.
Existence.
La culture, c'est un choix.
La culture, pour moi, c'est un mode de vie.
Je dirais que c'est l'ADN des peuples.
Culture is the basis of a society.
Je dirais que c'est un peu comme le sang qui coule dans les veines d'une communauté.
Culture is our connection to our ancestors.
Well, I think culture is what makes us human.
La culture, c'est ce qui identifie un peuple.
C'est finalement l'expression de la créativité des humains.
Culture is shared expression, shared ways of being, and shared knowledge.
Just to show who you are and where you're from.
Maybe culture is kind of like a mashup between kind of who you are and where you come from and where you think you're going to go.
Culture is expression and movement.
Culture is what makes every human, which are 99% identical, unique.
We define culture.
People and their experiences. La culture est définie, je pense, par l'environnement dans lequel les gens vivent. C'est l'expression de leur identité la plus profonde.
I think everything around us defines culture. The city we live in, the people around us. Culture is defined by the land and the people.
But for me, it has to do with expression through artistic means.
Selon moi, la communauté elle-même définit la culture, mais surtout aussi les aînés.
The people in a neighborhood, a town, the world, it's the people who define culture.
Your family, the things that surround you, your environment, are the things that define culture.
C'est les traditions, les valeurs, l'éthique des peuples.
C'est le peuple qui définit la culture.
La culture, c'est défini par la volonté des gens de vivre ensemble.
La personne qui définit la culture, la première personne, c'est nous-mêmes.
I define my culture.
Well, culture in my life is central to who I am and what I do, and it enriches every part of my life.
On aime la beauté, on cherche la beauté parce que c'est une des plus grandes satisfactions qu'on peut avoir dans la vie.
How I live my life every day in relation to the place that I live.
I'm a bridge between two worlds.
Culture is the basis of everything. That's a really lame answer, but it's true. It's the basis of everything.
Okay. So, as I was saying earlier before the video, it is necessary to understand the unique differences of culture. Culture is your identity, and culture is an expression of that identity. Well, that is what it is all about. Now, it is again necessary to understand the verbal, the nonverbal cues, precisely because many companies who probably established, not probably, definitely, who established their companies in other cultures, some of them generally fail, some of them generally become successful precisely because of their understanding of culture. So Amazon and Walmart, for example, two of the biggest industry players, could have not failed in China and Germany if only they understood the Chinese culture and of course the German culture that they could have incorporated in their corporate communications. For example, in the case of Walmart, the issue of smiling. Smiling to us is good. You know, we smile often. Smiling is a form of communications, a welcoming type of communications. Smiling builds relationships. It communicates warm and a welcoming attitude. We smile in the office, while at work, we greet people with a smile. In fact, smiling is a form of communications that is being encouraged. And in fact, I have seen leaders designating certain offices as smiling area. The same with Walmart. Walmart requires its checkout people as part of its strategy to flash smiles at customers after bagging their purchases. Now, Americans love that. That is part of their organizational and social culture. When they opened in Germany, their managers and leaders exported the same culture because that would be effective and also would be greeted with positive reaction, isn't it? Okay, of course, wrong. It isn't right, at least in the culture of among the Germans. Now, German people don't usually smile at total strangers. The spectacle of the Walmart employees awkwardly grinning not only did not impress consumers, in fact, it annoyed the consumers. Now, when you are about to manage an organization in a country not your own, or a country with diverse people, or even an organization wherein the employees are diverse, ask these questions. What does leadership and communication look like in other culture? The second one that you need to ask is, are there alternatives? Something that I don't know. And the third one is, what makes effective communication in different cultures? Here is my tip. Do not get stuck to the traditional idea that, hey, this is my company, this is my organization, this is my baby, that this is my DNA, and that what works before will always work everywhere. With this kind of mentality, many companies fail in this regard. What some companies don't realize is that what they only see when they're looking at a particular society that is different from their own is that it is known only as a surface culture. When Amazon launched in China, they think that the knowledge that they have about Chinese people, their fashion, the music, the games, that they are enough, but their inability to understand deep culture made them fail. There are many studies around the world which you can easily find about Amazon's failure in China against its rival. And I think the Amazon at the time, the rival was JD.com and Alibaba. And, and they were clobbered. Amazon was clobbered by the competition. But then another company, Dyson, became very successful in China. Okay, why did it become successful? It is all about being totally integrated in the deep culture of the Chinese society. Now, when you say deep integration, if you notice here, that which is basically deep culture, if you notice, when you look at culture, probably let us say that you look at the Indian people. You probably know about the food coming from India. You probably know about the flag, the festivals, the fashion, holiday, performance, dance, games. You celebrate Diwali. You co-celebrate with them if you're not from India, okay? But you understand and you know their celebrations, at least the most popular ones. Now, you also have to look, of course, into what is known as a deep culture, and that is communication styles, rules, facial expressions, gestures, eye contact. Okay, how do you interpret those nonverbal communications? Touching, body language, tone of voice, courtesy and manner, friendliness, friendship, leadership. How about self-time, past and future, fairness, justice, religion, courtship, decision-making, problem-solving? These are the nuances that you will not be able to learn unless you are integrated deeply and you know the deep culture of a particular country. One way to do integration, and this is again my tip, is to partner with NGOs. I think you know what NGOs are, okay? This non-governmental organization. For example, of course, in the country of interest where you want to open the business, because these organizations will help you to understand how the locals operate, know their perspective, how to effectively communicate, and of course, the brand of the company, the products or the services, among others. Now, when you just see the surface culture, the food, the language, the festivities popular in the country, you are missing the greater picture. That is the reason why biases, prejudices. I remember this, and I always tell this to my students. When I was very new here in the UAE, I think that was just my first week, and I came, immediately I started teaching. I got challenged by two students. After the class, they went to my office, and then they asked me, "Doctor, can you say fried chicken?" Okay, fried chicken. And then I said, "Fried chicken." And then they asked me again. They said, "Doctor, can you repeat it? Can you say fried chicken?" And then I said, "Fried chicken." And then they couldn't believe it. I could actually see the nonverbal cues. I could actually understand it. And it's like, what happened? Why does he know how to pronounce it? At that time, I didn't even know what they were after. And then the other person, the guy asked me, "Doctor," for the third time, that guy asked me, "Doctor, can you say it again?" Only when he asked me for the third time that it's, I realized something, that he was expecting me, the two of them, because they were classmates, they were expecting me to say fried chicken and not fried chicken, okay? And probably in their experience, although I understand them at that time, in their experience, probably they've met a Filipino who doesn't know how to speak, who's not able to distinguish the F from the P. And probably they've met a Filipino who says fried chicken. Probably the other day also a Filipino who says fried chicken. And another day also they've met a Filipino who says fried chicken, okay? And they think that all Filipinos they're not able to differentiate the F from the P. The thing here is, they are actually probably correct, because in our alphabet, we don't have the letter F. Okay, it's like some Arabs when they say, for example, Pepsi instead of Pepsi. Okay, but the thing also here, I've been going back to my example. The reason why many Filipinos are not able to say that precisely because if you're not educated and you know that the alphabet doesn't have an F, then you will not be able to pronounce it properly, of course, until it becomes a habit, until you keep on talking about it, speaking about it, then you learned out of it. The thing here is, these two students, they only knew the surface culture based on their limited experience. And they came up with a conclusion based on that limited experience, saying that all Filipinos are not able to distinguish F from the P, or they are not able to pronounce properly a word with the letter F. So they got surprised when they met me, realizing that I actually know how to distinguish and how to pronounce the letter F. Now, that is surface culture. So here is another example in terms of not seeing the greater picture. What do you see here? What do you see here? Where is my... Give me a second. Okay, I know that yesterday, probably you can have an answer using our chat. Anyone? What do you see here, this particular picture? Let's be interactive. Just write what do you see. What does it illustrate? What does the photo tell you? Are they able to write? A father, okay, holding his baby. That is correct. How about the others? What do you see? Let me see. Father and son relationship. Good. See, very beautiful, very romantic. Okay. Now, this, yes, dad holding the baby, according to Samaya. But if you look at it clearly, okay, father and son's legacy, that is correct. Okay, I like that. I like legacy. Okay, because the thing is, legacy is a continuation of from one generation to another. But let me have this. Okay, see, let me change this. Let me take this out. So if I take this out, you will notice this. Okay, it's basically a father with no leg and a son, okay, with no arms and no legs. That is the greater picture. You only see it precisely because little by little I peeled away the cover of the picture. It's basically, this is an award-winning photo, by the way, okay, of hope, of determination, of passion, of being positive, of being happy despite the bodily limitations. Okay, but my point here is, unless you peel away, you integrate yourself, you dig more, you study more, then you will realize that what you're only seeing is basically the surface. Another example of why you need to be integrated to understand, to properly understand the greater picture of a particular society as leaders, okay? Because that is going to be your obligation, your responsibility as leaders. What is this? Anyone? What do you think is this? Can you write in our chat? What do you think is this? Grasshopper. Okay, good. Probably there are other. What? Okay, Hadia, it means also grasshopper. That's good. That is fantastic. Very good. Okay. Now, what is this? Is it a pest? Is it a food? Okay. How in your culture, how do you treat this? Is it a pet? Is it a food, or probably a pest? What do you consider this in your culture? Okay, if you can food in Saudi Arabia, okay, insect, okay, Sumaya, okay. I would like to think, you know, do you have differences in culture as well? Again, there are many different interpretations on how particular culture treats this. Now, HSBC came up with an advertisement a few years back about differences in culture and why it is important to study the nuances. Okay, locus for Fatima, Hadiya in religion, it's punishment. In USA, it is a pest, but in China, it is basically a pet. In Thailand, it is a food. In fact, it is an appetizer. So understanding different perspectives and perceptions necessary. According to HSBC, and this has become a very popular advertisement because it gives us an idea, okay, of how we should look at different cultures, different from our own. And sometimes, you know, when you judge other culture, it is not because they are right, but we are want to do that. We are used to doing that. You know, when we see something different, we think that it is wrong, or we think that it is right, depending on our past experiences. But many times, it's not a matter of being right or being wrong. Many times, it's just that, you know, it's something that is unique to them. It is has something to do with their identity. It is not about being right and wrong. It simply is. So this is again a very powerful example of why you need to study other cultures as would-be leader and apply, okay, apply as it relates to that particular society. Let me give you a very simple, since this is just a talk, a very simple test in measuring your EQ. We have an IQ, intelligence quotient. Okay, we have also the emotional quotient, and you need to be really good at the emotional quotient. But we also have the CQ. And CQ nowadays is very important, especially in a globalized world, because it relates, it measures your cultural intelligence. CQ is cultural intelligence. So if you have a paper, if you have a phone, please answer these questions. Okay, well, let's try to diagnose your cultural intelligence, because this is necessary for leaders. Because remember that communications is understanding, and it is not just about understanding what's written or what you hear, but the nuances, the nonverbal communications as well, and how you relate to other people is communications. So you need to rate to the extent to which you agree with its statement using the scale of 1 is strongly disagree, and of course 5 is strongly agree. Number 1, before I interact with people from a new culture, use your phone, notes probably, or pads if you have there. I ask myself what I hope to achieve. You write down number 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. I will only repeat the questions twice, or the statement. Before I interact with people from a new culture, I ask myself what I hope to achieve. Okay, done. Next. If I encounter something unexpected while working in a new culture, I use this experience to figure out new ways to approach other cultures in the future. I repeat, if I encounter something unexpected while working in a new culture, I use this experience to figure out new ways to approach other cultures in the future. Strongly disagree, or strongly agree or neutral, please just write the number. The number is more important because you will be calculating later on. Next one. I plan how I'm going to relate to people from a different culture before I meet them. Okay. I plan how I'm going to relate to people from a different culture before I meet them. 1, 2, 3, or 5. Next one. When I come into a new cultural situation, I can immediately sense whether something is going well or something is wrong. I repeat, when I come into a new cultural situation, I can immediately sense whether something is going well or something is wrong. So rate 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now, the next thing that you need to do out of the 4 questions is you get the total, okay? The total of that first question or first statement, the second, the third, and the fourth. And then when you get the total, divided by 4, okay? Divided by 4, and the sum, just put the sum and remember it, okay? Because you will be using it a little later when we go into the interpretation of the result. Again, total divided by 4, and of course, you will come up with the sum. Done? Okay, so leave it at that. We'll start again with a new question, okay, a new calculation. So here, it's easy for me to change my body language, for example, eye contact or posture, to suit people from a different culture. It's easy for me to change my body language, for example, eye contact or posture, to suit people from a different culture. 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. Next. I can alter my expression when a cultural encounter requires it. I can alter my expression when a cultural encounter requires it. 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. When you say alter, it means you can change your expression when you encounter someone from a different culture. Next one. I modify my speech style, for example, accent or tone to suit people from a different culture. I'm able to change my accent, for example, or the tone of my voice when I'm talking to another person of different culture. I will repeat, I modify my speech style, for example, accent and tone to suit people from a different culture. Next one, I easily change the way I act when a cross-cultural encounter seems to require it. I easily change the way I act, your actions, when there is another person from another country, okay? And it seems that the situation requires it, okay? So out of the 4 again, the second 4, okay? The total divided by 4 and then the sum. Okay, remember that. The last 4 ones. Do not include the first 4 ones, only the last 4 ones. Total divided by 4 and then the sum. Okay, once you have the sum, leave it at that. We will start again with another one. I have confidence that I can deal well with people from different culture. I have confidence that I can deal well with people from a different culture. Okay, next one. I am certain that I can befriend people whose cultural backgrounds are different from mine. I am certain that I can befriend people whose cultural backgrounds are different from mine. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Next one. I can adapt to the lifestyle of a different culture with relative ease. When you say relative ease, easily, like no difficulty. I can adapt to the lifestyle of a different culture with relative ease. Again, from 1 to 5. Last one. I am confident that I can deal with a cultural situation that's unfamiliar. I am confident that I can deal with a cultural situation that's unfamiliar. Something that you have not experienced, something that is not familiar to you, but you can deal with it. Like you're not going to run away from it. Once you have rated that from 1 to 5, again, the total, and then you will have divided by 4, just like earlier, and then the sum. So if you notice, this particular 4 slides, it's all about the emotional motivational CQ or cultural quotient. And then the other one, okay, the second to this one is going to be about your physical CQ. And the very first one would actually be about your cognitive CQ, okay? Something that has something to do with your mind. So these statements reflect different facets of cultural intelligence. This is how you will have the score. For each set, you have 3 sets. Add up each, remember that, each, and you did that already. Add up your scores and divide by 4 to produce an average. Our work with large groups of managers showed that for the purpose of your own development, it is most useful to think about your 3 scores in comparison with the other. So generally, an average of less than 3. If you score less than 3, it would indicate an area calling for improvement, while an average of greater than 4.5 reflects a true CQ strength. I will repeat that. For example, in the first 4 slides, you got 3 below, then it means that you need to improve, okay, in that particular area. For the other, probably for the others, the other sets, you might probably have around 5 or 6, it depends. Then you did not focus on those precisely because you already have the skill. So I will not be asking you about, because this is something that is personal probably to you, so I will not be asking you about the result. But what I'm trying to say here is explore the areas wherein you've scored less than 3 and try to attend conferences, trainings, and workshops in order for you to be able to enhance that particular gap or the lack. Do you have questions about this? Is there something that you need to be clarified about this particular activity? Do you have questions? None? Okay, what about if you get a 3.5, then you also need to enhance. okay, you'll still have to enhance. Because the thing is 4.5, greater than 4.5 is the one that gives us the measurement that you have the skill. Okay, thank you very much. Now, give me a second. So thank you very much. I will continue. I'll move on. So here is an example of being aware that even the hand gesture, for example, the crossed fingers in the Philippines, okay, crossed fingers like this, okay, is about bringing good luck. But in Vietnam, it resembles the female genitalia. So this gesture is offensive and it is lewd. Okay, and we are not advised to do that, even if basically part of our culture is that when we say, okay, you're taking the examination, good luck. Okay, this is good luck for us, but this is offensive in other countries. Remember this, okay? Study the nonverbal cues of other countries. Here in the Middle East, for example, it's incredibly rude to eat, pick anything up, or hand over money with your left hand. And of course, many of you probably know this, because the left hand is what? It is considered unclean. But if you go deeper, it isn't just that the left hand is unclean, but also that in the Islamic culture, generally, okay, it sees good actions or deeds as related to the right hand, while bad deeds are done by the left hand. These are just examples, okay, of the global guide to hand gestures. And please, if you are a global leader aspiring to become a global leader, you're introducing a campaign to other countries, other nationalities, be very careful of the images, of the nuances, of the gestures that you will present. Now, global leaders are bridge makers. Okay, you are connectors, you are blenders. You bridge the gaps, and of course, you bridge cultures and language barriers. Now, how do you know what type of leadership style and communications channel and processes basically are essential in a particular country? Here is one resource. Generally, in terms of knowing the different cultures, having a knowledge, it's basically like a bank of knowledge of cross-cultural communications and leadership styles. I will be giving you one of the three most famous studies, massive studies. In my students, generally I teach them in terms of communications with other culture, or leadership, cross-cultural leadership as well. And if you become my students, of course, then you will know a lot about this rather deeply. So here is one resource among the three, and that I can give you to have a better understanding of the different cultures and leadership expectations of each country all over the world. This is known as the GLOBE study. And this is one of the most influential studies in cross-cultural research. So this Global Organization Behavior Effectiveness, or GLOBE study, is a 10-year-long study, and it was based on responses from approximately 17,000 managers from 951 organizations in 62 countries, investigating how understanding cultural values can affect communications, can affect leadership. Understanding culture is part of interpersonal competency, and interpersonal competency facilitates excellent communication. Let me give you an idea, okay, how this works. Give me a second. I will give you an idea how this works, okay? New share, let me see. Okay, I'll be sharing this. Look at this, okay? Now, here is the GLOBE project. Hadia, you're raising your hand. What is it? Tell me.
I would, first of all, thank you, Doctor, for taking this time and explaining this to us. I would like to mention also, one of the things to focus on in a different culture is also pronouncing the staff or someone's name correctly.
Sure.
I think this is very important to gain the trust for your employee and your staff as a leadership.
That is true, Hadia. That is fantastic. In fact, later on, okay, I think there is a slide here about mentioning one of the tips for really fantastic communications. And when I say communications, it's basically connecting, okay? Because remember what I mentioned earlier, communication is not just information, but communication is about connecting deeply with other people. And one way to do that is to basically mention the name. Okay, it's mentioned that. Thank you, Hadia. Thank you very much for that. Okay. Now, again, my gratitude with that. As I mentioned here, okay, one of the resources, most prominent resources in terms of studying culture, for example, you're going to establish a particular company in China, in Brazil, in the Philippines, in the US, in Canada, and you know that there are differences in culture. Where do you get this study? And what kind also of leadership, okay, will you exhibit when you are in other countries, or even not in other countries? Let us say, for example, that you are managing a team of different people. And when I say different people with different values, different beliefs, different nationalities, different colors, among many others. So here is one, this globe study. You click this. Let me give this to you, okay? I'll put it in the chat, the link. Give me a second so that it goes to all of you. I'm sharing this. It's there, okay? So let us say, for example, you go to country lists. And let us say that we have here, let us say India, okay? Since, where is India here? There you go, Southern Asia. You click this and it will open this. Okay, if you notice here, this is known as cultural visualization. Now, what happened? Sorry. Okay, there you go. Now here, if you notice, these are known as dimensions. One, to this performance orientation, assertiveness. This make up the behavior or culture of people or Indians in India, of course, their society. Let's go into assertiveness. Okay, what is assertiveness? Assertiveness is the degree to which individuals are assertive, confrontational, and aggressive in their relationship with others. Okay, so are Indian people assertive? Now, there are two colors here, or two bars. This one, the purple one, okay, the pale purple and the pale blue. Now, the pale purple is basically what is known as the practices, meaning to say that this is what the Indians are doing now. This is how they are assertive, the level of their assertiveness today. This is in practice, okay? So in practice, it's basically they're not assertive, Indians, generally. They're just between relatively low and medium. Okay, it's not low, but it's not really assertive. Now, this pale blue indicates that this is the country value score, meaning to say that the Indians want to be more assertive. They aspire to become more assertive than they already are. I hope I give to you, properly the explanation in a very clear manner. So the blue ones is their ideal. We need to be assertive more. Now, by the way, it's a common misconception that assertiveness means being hostile, being difficult, being rude and self-promoting. Well, of course, they can coexist. Assertiveness doesn't mean being aggressive, really, okay, in the sense that it's being hurtful. It doesn't mean that it's being loud when you are aggressive. Speaking of women, for the women who are here, have you ever wondered why there are less women in the leadership position? Why companies' board, for example, are populated with the male gender and not necessarily male? Why is it, for example, remember that yesterday I said that around probably 2 years ago, it started when the UAE encouraged, or not encouraged, but demanded that all the government offices or companies, they will have at least one woman in their board. Okay, which gives you an idea that there is a lack of women participation or leadership in the board. So the reason generally is that men are assertive while women are agreeable, and leadership needs people who are not agreeable but assertive. You will notice this in your study of leadership in terms also of the study of communications, of the way people, of leaders generally who are assertive, the way they exhibit their verbal cues and the nonverbal cues. This is why when women ask me how do they become leaders, I usually recommend for them to go through assertiveness workshops and training. In these workshops that usually I conduct together with the others, women are being taught the different ways that they can be assertive. I remember this, I think it was a clinical psychologist, Lauren Powell, who said that society as a whole values women who are passive and agreeable. Agreeableness is not the ingredient and the formula for business leadership. For this reason, women silence themselves, fearing that they'll be seen as bossy, as demanding, as high maintenance. And I think to some extent, those who are listening to me right now, you probably somehow silenced yourself because you don't want to appear bossy, even if there's nothing wrong with it. In fact, even Plato, the Greek philosopher, mentioned that there's really no difference between a man and a woman. The only difference between a man and a woman is that women carry children, give birth to babies, or, just basically that, give birth. But given the proper training, given the same education, both in a very competitive world, will somehow, the success, the strength, the intelligence will be measured according to how dedicated the person is, regardless of gender, or how passionate that person is. Now, instead of advocating for themselves, women generally in today's society remain silent. They stretch themselves by always saying yes. Again, there are exceptions. This is a general study. And they bend their boundaries for others and do things that don't make them happy. So as a result, they hold themselves back. In fact, there was an interview of the CEO of Bottom Line Group, I think it was a particular Hammelberger, and he said that he believes that women are capable of rising through the ranks, whether in business, whether in politics, organization, based on their talents, on their skills, on their capabilities alone. Yet, in order to rise through the ranks, they need to be more assertive, to be seen, and of course, get what they want. Now, you, women listening to me now, you face and will be facing many obstacles in the workplace today. And one of these obstacles, for example, this is just an example, probably it's about not receiving equal pay by their male counterparts. Because in fact, if I remember this again very clearly, in 2020, PayScale released the gender pay gap in the US. It was the report that was released. And that report revealed that women only make around 0.81, for every dollar that a man makes. I'm talking here about the US. Taking into account the number of raises given a 40-year career, women lose around an average of $900,000 over their lifetime because of this gender pay gap. So, in fact, another analysis by Mercer was conducted about around more than 1,000 organizations around the world and found that only a small portion of women currently hold a leadership position, despite more women in the US holding bachelor's degree, and in fact, even outpacing men in the total number of doctorate and master's degrees earned. Only 23%, women are in senior vice president positions. And again, if I remember this, around less than 21% are in the C-suite. The reality, of course, is women don't actively pursue these high-level positions because they lack confidence, the leadership identity, and assertiveness to do so. Of course, again, with some exceptions, but as a general trend. So as a consequence, 62% of women have been passed over a promotion in favor of a male employee. Now, in my experience, women with strong leadership identity are those who communicate clearly, who choose to respond with reason instead of being reactive emotionally, emotionally over the top. Women with the ability to lead will always have a very strong sense of purpose and value and how to effectively advocate and defend themselves. So what I'm trying to say here is, in some of the assertiveness trainings for women that I have given, part of that is focusing on non-verbal communication. Like, for example, do you even know that there is what is known as power poses? A pose, a pose about how to create an impression of power. I'll give you this particular video on non-verbal cues on power poses. Just give me a second again. Okay, here it is. I think it's already here. Give me a second. No, not this. Your body language. Let me do this. I will start with 344. Okay, let's start here.
Thoughts and our feelings and our physiology. So what nonverbals am I talking about? I'm a social psychologist. I study prejudice and I teach at a competitive business school. So it was inevitable that I would become interested in power dynamics. I became especially interested in nonverbal expressions of power and dominance. And what are nonverbal expressions of power and dominance? Well, this is what they are. So in the animal kingdom, they are about expanding. So you make yourself big, you stretch out, you take up space, you're basically opening up. It's about opening up. And this is true across the animal kingdom. It's not just limited to primates, and humans do the same thing. So they do this both when they have power sort of chronically, and also when they're feeling powerful in the moment. And this one is especially interesting because it really shows us how universal and old these expressions of power are. This expression, which is known as pride, Jessica Tracy has studied, she shows that people who are born with sight and people who are congenitally blind do this when they win at a physical competition. So when they cross the finish line and they won, it doesn't matter if they've never seen anyone do it, they do this. So the arms up in the V, the chin is slightly lifted. What do we do when we feel powerless? We do exactly the opposite. We close up, we wrap ourselves up, we make ourselves small. We don't want to bump into the person next to us. So again, both animals and humans do the same thing. And this is what happens when you put together high and low power. So what we tend to do when it comes to power is that we complement the other's nonverbals. So if someone's being really powerful with us, we tend to make ourselves smaller. We don't mirror them, we do the opposite of them. So I'm watching this behavior in the classroom, and what do I notice? I notice that MBA students really exhibit the full range of power nonverbal. So you have people who are like caricatures of alphas, like really coming into the room. They get right into the middle of the room before class even starts, like they really want to occupy space. When they sit down, they're sort of spread out. They raise their hands like this. You have other people who are virtually collapsing when they come in. As soon as they come in, you see it. You see it on their faces and their bodies. And they sit in their chair and they make themselves tiny. And they go like this when they raise their hand. I noticed a couple of things about this. One, you're not going to be surprised. It seems to be related to gender. So women are much more likely to do this kind of thing than men. Women feel chronically less powerful than men, so this is not surprising. But the other thing I noticed is that it also seemed to be related to the extent to which the students were participating and how well they were participating. And this is really important in the MBA classroom because participation counts for half the grade. So business schools have been struggling with this gender grade gap. You get these equally qualified women and men coming in, and then you get these differences in grades, and it seems to be partly attributable to participation. So I started to wonder, okay, so you have these people coming in like this and they're participating. Is it possible that we could get people to fake it, and would it lead them to participate more? So my main collaborator, Dana Carney, who's at Berkeley, and I really wanted to know, can you fake it till you make it? Like, can you do the...
Okay. The video is long, but very interesting take. And in my training for assertiveness, I usually show this video as part of the introduction. And again, my advice to women who want to become leaders, or even to men who want to become leaders, in terms of having that kind of a knowledge about, as she mentioned, faking it until you make it. It's not in a derogatory sense. It is in a sense that you need to acquire such an attitude, such a behavior, okay, a nonverbal posing in order for your path to be opened to leadership. Okay, again, remember this. I know that this is a talk limited by time, so I cannot go deeply into it, but I do recommend that you go through assertiveness training. Okay. Now, if I have to go back to this, if you notice here, it's not just India, okay, you go through about in-group collectivism. This will give you information on the culture. You also have many other countries here that you can research if you have a team or a group with different people, different cultures. And of course, what type of leadership such a country needs. For example, in India, what is needed is a charismatic leader. Okay, and therefore your communications, your words, your enunciations, the way you deliver should be one that exhibits kindness, a tone that is not aggressive, a tone that is welcoming, okay, but assured for that matter. You cannot be successful as a leader in India if you are self-protective, because if you notice in the leadership, self-protection, meaning to say being selfish, always making sure that you are secure more than the others is going to be the least in their priorities. When a leader is selfish, always the language is always me, I'm the actor, I'm the best. This is how I view it. Without engaging the team, then you will end up losing the team. You will end up breaking the company. Okay, this is again a very, very useful source of information. Okay, let me go back to my slide. Okay. Part of this, and I just remember this, there is this type of study that I read which shows that you, women, you apologize more often than men. Okay, again, this is part of communication. You apologize more often than men because generally, okay, you have a lower threshold for what you consider to be offensive. Women are generally more empathetic, and therefore, being empathetic, you also generally apologize. You say sorry more than men. Now, there is a difference between apologizing when you're taking responsibility for a mistake or against being a serial apologist. In fact, compulsively apologizing is seen as a weakness because the apology is given even if it's not necessary. Have you experienced this, or do you usually say this? Every time you say, I'm sorry, every time you say, I'm sorry, you walk, you bump, you don't even bump anyone, and then you just said sorry. When you email, for example, you start with, I'm sorry to bother you. Okay, so every time that you do it, you become a serial, it's a serial apologist for that matter. I will give you some tips. This is not part of my talk now. Okay, just remember that because in relation to women, okay, which is basically a theme in this series of talks. I will give you a tip on what are the applicable, well, a tip not just for women, but I've also encountered some men who are also serial apologists, but very few of them. And usually, even if you don't serially apologize, still I've encountered some. So here are a few phrases that you can use in place of habitually saying I'm sorry. For example, instead of saying sorry, I'm late, okay, instead of saying that, say thank you for your patience. See? Or thank you for waiting for me. No need to say you're sorry. Or rather than saying, I'm sorry that time doesn't work for me, okay, then probably you can say, unfortunately, that time doesn't work for me. Or, for example, you say, excuse me, could you repeat it? Instead of saying, I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you. Or probably you could also ask, for example, could you please send me that document by the end of the day? Instead of saying, I'm sorry to bother you, but please, can you send to me the document when you have the time? Stop being apologetic. You haven't done anything. Okay? Hadia said here, in my opinion, saying sorry sometimes is being polite. It's true. But there is a difference between saying it continuously every day of your life in all situations. Because again, it diminishes your powerful persona. Again, go through assertiveness training to know more about this. Now, so be globally competent, be able to adapt to different situations. I've given you some of the resources Explore the Globe study of cultures. There's also Hofstede study of culture. There's also Trompenar study. Okay, and they are very helpful as guide to knowing what and how to take actions that will communicate clearly and successfully and avoid pitfalls and frustrations. Now, even if I say any questions, please don't ask questions right now. Okay, it only signals the end of a particular topic. So let's go to negotiation skills. I only have 30 minutes or 25 minutes, so I'll be very fast. Okay, and thank you for your understanding. So let's go into negotiation skills. Now, negotiation is a method wherein each people, okay, by which people generally settle differences. Negotiation skill is a process by which compromise or agreement is reached while avoiding argument, while avoiding dispute. So in any disagreement, individuals understandably aim to achieve the best possible outcome for their position, or perhaps, the organization they represent. But the thing here is the principles of fairness, the principle of seeking, mutual benefit and maintaining relationship are the keys to a successful outcome. Conflict due to personal interests are common. Conflict is normal. As long as we are human beings in a society, every day of your life, you will see people disagreeing. You, even yourself, ask, demand, you plead, you negotiate, hoping to win an advantage or favor or settle a difference. Now, the question here is there a way to settle in a win-win situation or resolve, or probably lose with dignity? Or negotiation skills can be of great benefit to you in resolving any differences that arise between you and the other person that you're negotiating with. Now, negotiation, this is the one. Negotiation is basically, as defined here, back and forth communication designed to reach an agreement. Okay, and as stated here, common interest, like you want to buy, the other person want to sell, and you have opposed interest, and it would have an example like the price at which you both want, how will this happen is different. So it is important that you have negotiation mastery because it equips you with the skill to close certain deals that might otherwise be deadlocked. And you need to maximize certain values in the agreements that you reach. And of course, you need to settle certain differences. Let's dive into it, okay, in a very brief manner in negotiation skills. There are two primary types of negotiations. You have what is distributive and integrative. Do not be confused with all these terminologies. I'll explain this in a simple manner. What is distributive negotiation? Okay. It is a competitive bargaining strategy in which one person or one party gains only if the other party loses. You will only gain something if the other one loses. It is used as a negotiation strategy in order to distribute, for example, fixed resources like money, assets, between parties. An example here for you to understand this better is like that of buying a car. Let us say that you're buying a car. Now, this is a classic example of distributive bargaining. A car sales involve two different persons, two different parties, a buyer and a seller. Now, in this case, each person has different interests. While the seller wants to make as much money as possible, the buyer seeks to pay the least amount of money possible. Again, this is just an example to make everything simpler. Now, what about integrative negotiation? Integrative bargaining, okay, also called as interest-based bargaining or a win-win bargaining, is a negotiation strategy in which parties collaborate, both persons or organizations represented by persons, they collaborate to find a win-win solution to their disagreement or dispute. So interests include the needs, the desires, the concerns, the fears, that are important to each party. Now, since distributive bargaining is characterized by a win-lose outcome, the process tends to give you a very competitive or even adversarial. When I say adversarial, you look at the other person as an enemy, okay? And parties involved in the negotiation do not have shared interest as they both try to come up on the negotiation being on top. Again, you look at each other, at the other person as an enemy. Now, I won't necessarily generally recommend distributive negotiation in an organization, okay, because of the competitive nature of approach. Some individuals participating in this kind of negotiation may attempt to gain an advantage over the others through being dishonest, being deceptive, being manipulative, using all of those tactics. Some parties, for example, can even hide critical information that could benefit the other party, resulting in less favorable outcomes for their competitors. Now, students, while distributive bargaining is likely to benefit the more aggressive bargainer, the win may come at the cost of future business or endeavors. If I have to go back to the car sale example, since there is unlikely to be continued business between these two individuals after the sale in distributive negotiation, the relationship aspect of the negotiation is not important. I don't care about our relationship. I just want to buy a car with the least amount of money. Okay, but that is not, of course, the idea of the seller. So both parties, after the negotiation, go back and forth in adversarial manner until a deal is agreed upon. At the end of this negotiation, either the person or the customer, the salesperson, the customer may receive the better end of the agreement, but somebody in this kind of the negotiation loses. Now, while distributive bargaining can be very useful when trying to receive the best deal possible, the method tends to benefit strong or aggressive negotiator the most. And it also tends to somehow create, a competition between two negotiating parties, which is not a good way to negotiate. What is recommended is to use integrative negotiation you have to master this type of a skill. How is this being done? When preparing to negotiate, always time to consider the most important framework to succeed or obtain the maximum benefit, and that is the alternative to a negotiation. Remember what I'm saying. It's rather technical, but I will explain it in a simple manner a little later with examples. Alternative to a negotiation, an option, the minimum threshold for a negotiated deal. How far can you go in the negotiation? How flexible you are willing to be, and what trade-offs can you or are you willing to make? Okay, what are the certain sacrifices that you are willing to make in order to get what you want? Okay, again, in this type of negotiation. Here is what is important. Ask these questions. In negotiation skill, what is my BATNA? B-A-T-N-A. You will use, as you see here, okay, in the PowerPoint with a bold one, BATNA, or best alternative to a negotiated agreement. Meaning to say, what will happen to me if the negotiation fails? Remember this. What will happen to me if the negotiation fails? What is my walk-away option if the deal fails? What are my most important interests? Of course, you have to rank it in order. Now, it is not just about your BATNA, but it is also about the other side, the other BATNA, the BATNA of the other person. What are his interests? In any negotiation, it is important to build, somehow a framework to succeed or obtain the maximum benefit. Again, the alternative to a negotiation, and as I mentioned, that of your threshold. So, by the way, ZOPA here, if you notice, Z-O-P-A, ZOPA here means a zone of possible agreement, okay? And it is also called the bargaining range, okay? The range wherein you can bargain. It exists if there is a potential agreement that would benefit both sides more than the alternative options do. I'll give an example. I know I'm being technical, but I'll give an example. Let us say, for example, I want to buy a used car for 25,000 dirhams or less. Okay, I want to buy a car, 25,000 dirhams or less. And the seller wants to sell one for me for 24,500 dirhams. Okay, I'm willing to pay 25,000 dirhams or less, but then the seller is offering me, he doesn't know that I'm willing to pay that much. So when I ask him, how are you selling it? How much are you selling it? The person says 24,500. Then here we have a ZOPA. Okay. At the negotiation table, the best way to uncover your negotiation counterpart's hidden interest is to ask the question first. Like when I ask, I already have my money, I'm willing to spend this much. Please do not say that, okay, here is what I'm willing to spend. First, ask, how much are you going to sell? Okay, because the difference will be your ZOPA. Now, ask questions, then listen carefully. Always be open by asking and listening to the other person's interest. If your style of listening isn't sufficiently empathetic, it won't elicit an honest response. So again, you'll have to ask a lot of questions to get a clear picture of the seller's interest, the other person's interest. And to model this type of response you're seeking, you must be willing to reveal also your own interest. So practitioners often assume that exposing their own interests probably will give the other side an unfair advantage, but this is not true. Okay? Or if it is true, it is rarely true. Transparency is appreciated by both parties. So that, for example, even if I have my ZOPA, I would like, for example, 25,000, I would always come up with a story. I will say that here is the situation. I don't have this much money right now. Okay. I don't have the effort to do that, but I need a car precisely because I have a family. So a particular narrative. Okay. Now, that is the ZOPA. And what about, for example, the advantage of knowing your BATNA? When you know your BATNA, you know what you will do or what will happen if you fail to reach an agreement in the negotiation at hand. So what's the disadvantage of ignoring it? People put themselves in a very bad position. Some of them will reject a good offer that is much better than their alternatives because they are overly optimistic if you don't have a BATNA. Now, what is a BATNA? Let me go back to the example of the seller and the buyer of the car. Again, this is just an example that you may apply in other scenarios. I need a car and I am negotiating, for example, with, let us say, a SIF. Okay, I'm basically negotiating with a SIF, who is the seller of the car. So a SIF offers to sell his car to me for 25,000 dirhams. I explored through EDEXCEL and I find a similar car to which he assigns a dollar value of 15,500 dirhams. Okay. Now, I saw it in EDEXCEL. My BATNA here now is 15,500 dirhams. If a SIF does not offer a price lower than 15,500, I will consider my best alternative to a negotiated agreement. I am willing to only pay up to 15,500 for the car, but would ideally want to pay 13,000 dirhams only, because I've seen at EDEXCEL that there is one willing to pay less than what a SIF is offering me. So if a SIF demands a price higher than 15,500, I will take my business elsewhere. In this example, I am not provided with a SIF's BATNA. Okay, this is the reverse. So if we assume that a SIF can sell his car to someone else for, let us say, 28,000 dirhams, then 28,000 dirhams is a SIF's BATNA. In such a scenario, an agreement will not be made, as a SIF is only willing to sell her minimum of 25,000 dirhams, while I am only willing to purchase at a maximum of 15,500 dirhams. But since there will be no negotiation because we have our own individual BATNA that's exactly opposite, even if our negotiation fails, then we have the best alternative decision. The point here is, BATNA is about identifying the ceilings and flexibilities of both parties. When negotiation fails, then you know what to do because you have your best alternative. Many leaders in the negotiation table, they are so passionate. You know, they really force themselves because they don't have the BATNA. And they lose the edge, because if I am in the negotiation table and I realize, because you've been very strong in pushing your intention, okay, then I will immediately know using nonverbal cues that you don't have the BATNA. Okay, it takes again a lot of mastery when it comes to that, not just 1.5 hours of lecture or talk. But the point here is this is in fact most of these steps here, okay, I have already explained. So I will not really dwell on this. And this is about listening, knowing your BATNA and the other person's or partner's BATNA, and being flexible. So avoid, the car dealer trick here, which I mentioned also here. And when you say car dealer trick, it's just a way of saying that in negotiation, you should avoid bad tactics just to gain an unfair advantage over the other. Just like, a car salesman that will hide some information or probably talk fast and entering into a negotiation. So without a plan. So what I'm trying to say here is before you enter a negotiation, you talk to the other person, find your BATNA and find the BATNA of the other person in order to have an edge. When negotiating, here are some advices. Never be late. Choose a good atmosphere. Show interest and respect for the other people involved in the negotiation process. Put in a value first of the positive aspects and try to minimize the impact of negative ones. Be flexible, be open, be positive. If the atmosphere is tense, decompress it. Many mistakes are committed when you are speaking, okay, with a very high emotion. Sometimes even informal talk, not related with the negotiation, basically helps. So respect the time to express what the other person needs. They have the right to also talk. They have the right to breathe. So be careful when approaching other people from other culture. Be careful when approaching senior people, disabled person, and of course, consideration in gender. This is why we started with the study, we started with the study of the globe, study of culture, and lastly, of course, find the common interest among parties. Now, here are some common errors to avoid at negotiation. Okay, just I don't have time. It's already 3:48. So these are all of, probably you can screenshot this or this can be given to you. So just study them. They're very easy to follow. These are just some of the suggestions, but I will be focusing more on, please research more on how BATNA is being implemented in a deeper manner. Because the thing is, in today's world of negotiation, it has been recommended by many institutions, being used by institutions. I'm not going to give you a suggestion or a tactic that happened years ago. Okay, BATNA is something that is being recommended by Harvard Business Review, by The Economist, and many other companies. Okay, and let me say I have 5 minutes more, so the suggestions I will skip. I will go to coaching and motivation, the last one. Okay, so we are now in some global interpersonal communication insights. These are certain tips. Okay, now when negotiating or confronting, the worst you can do is be emotional. In fact, when we are criticized as leaders or a certain negative feedback in communications is hurled, and we expectedly, feel bad about it, and we sometimes can't accept it because, it's bad. It's not me. Okay. Often we see certain emotions as unacceptable and we refuse to acknowledge them. But remember this, you need to be responsible and you need to acknowledge them and know that nobody also, in one way or the other, can make you feel in a certain way. You feel a certain way because of a meaning that you apply to it, to an event for that matter. And because of that, you can change any of your mental filters and emotional responses. You may feel probably very bad in a given situation, but you always have a choice on how to act on it. Now, when you are dealing with someone, okay, who has a fixed mindset, who is refusing to open their minds. I would like to think you've encountered these types of persons, that person is just close-minded. How can I resolve this, doctor? Okay, try this technique. The technique is I like, I wonder. What does it mean? Start by saying two things that you like about the idea. This is why you need to listen first to the other person, what he is saying. Understand. And then in your mind, try to come up with the two things that you like about his idea. For example, you can say, I like X, okay, X representing one idea, and I like Y, Y representing another idea. So I like. And then you will say, I wonder if, and then you you incorporate your idea or somebody else's idea. The point here is, you try to appease and you try to give that impression that, hey, I understand you. Hey, I recognize your idea and they are important. But can we take a look into this idea? This is an effective technique to open up a fixed mindset and entertain an option. Now, in communication, especially if you're in leadership position, it is necessary that you give a pep talk to motivate employees to action. You know, these very brief statements or words, generally this happens in restaurants and companies. Amazon do this, Apple do this, in their teams before they open the stores, etc. Do you have this pep talk to your team? Okay. Now, give a pep talk to motivate employees to action, but know how to give one. Okay, the ability to deliver an energizing pep talk is a prerequisite for any leader or global leader. But few managers receive formal training in how to give one. So instead, they learn probably by imitating inspirational bosses, coaches, or even fictional characters. But there is actually a science to motivating people in this way. There is a formula that will help people get psyched up in moments that are, before the important event or performance. According to research, most winning formulas include the three elements. And you can see it here in the PowerPoint presentation, okay? When you give a pep talk or a short talk of encouragement to your team, it must have the following three ingredients: direction giving, expression of empathy, and of course, meaning making. And the most extensive research in this field, known as motivational language theory, or MLT, is a product of 3 decades of studies and applications in the corporate world. Okay, direction giving is the use of uncertainty reducing language. You need to reduce the uncertainty. You need to reduce the confusion. This is when you, as the leader of the team, you provide information how precisely the job or the task should be done. For example, giving easily understandable instruction, good definition of task, and detail on how performance will be evaluated. Empathetic language shows concern for the performer as a human being. It can include, probably you can praise them, encourage them, show your gratitude, acknowledge the difficulty of the job. Phrases like, how are you doing? I know that this is a challenge, but I trust that you can do it. And, your well-being is one of my top priorities. All of these fit into this category. Meaning making explains why the task is important, why this job of yours is important. This involves linking the purpose of the organization or mission to the goal of the listener. So meaning making language includes the use of stories about people who have worked or succeeded in the company, or about how the work has made a real difference in the lives of the community. I'll give an example for this. Let us say that you are a supervisor of a fast food restaurant. This is again a basic example. Okay, speaking probably, and you're speaking before the restaurant opens to part-time teenager employees, meaning to say students who work part-time. In this scenario, in this context, you can use empathetic lines like, you can say, I know this is difficult. You go home every day, okay, every night smelling of grease and food, of oil, and you're working so late that you're up until midnight finishing your homework. Or you can probably creatively link labor to purpose. For example, the supervisor, or you might probably say, our goal as a company isn't just to provide people with fast, satisfying meals. It's also providing good, stable jobs so that employees like you have money to help your families, to save, for college, or to enjoy yourselves when you are not at work. The more that you help this restaurant, you can say this, for example, the more that you help this restaurant meet its goal, then the better that you will be able to continue doing what you are doing right now, which is improving yourself. See? I hope you have an understanding, okay? Now, classmates, at this point in time, since again, it's already 3:55, I just basically want to say this. Many times, you know, when you are stressed, I think this is important because I know that even if this is about business communications, I know that life is going to be very stressful. And here is one practical advice that I could give you based on research in a 2016 study, wherein it says that based on the experiment, that if you're stressed from work, always have a break. And that break is, you know, they call it the Pomodoro Technique, but the quality of the break is that you need to look at something that's green. And generally, they advise to look at trees. Okay, look at plants, look at trees. Okay, and because the trees in their experiment, they realized that somehow they energized the controlled people. When I say controlled in this particular experiment, the people who participated in the experiment. So if you don't have trees, okay, around you, look at pictures with trees. You might think, really? Yes. Okay, I am not making this up. This is something that is a byproduct of careful study. In this study, they noticed that there is a 60% increase in their ability to recover from stress compared to those who watch fewer trees. Okay. And then, of course, one thing more that I need you to know before I end this, in the end, you know, the most effective communication is one where it is not just your ears that listen, okay, but your heart, a heart that is empathetic, one that understands that each one of us faces challenges and difficulties every day of our lives, and that we need to be kinder, gentler in a way that we act, we talk, and treat to one another, because the best communications come from the understanding, from an understanding heart. And for you women, in the beginning of my talk yesterday, I mentioned that the best way to open a speech is by telling a story about one's unique experiences that inspires. And this is the reason why from here on, you push yourself, you motivate yourself, you go to a journey wherein people will see, will hear, you understand the struggles that you are going through. And somehow your story, your life story, will inspire other people because you've made it, because you've presented to the world that it's possible to be a better version of yourself despite the wall of challenges and difficulties. Thank you very much and hope you have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Dr. Rex. So if there are any questions, Dr. Rex would be happy to answer. Do we have any questions from the attendees?
I know that some of you, Supriya, I apologize. I know that some of you ask about email, but given the limitation of time, I wasn't able to discuss it. I hope that probably, you know, there are certain channels or opportunities, because, you know, writing an email, especially in a highly globalized world, is going to be different from one country to another. And you really need to understand that, okay? It's going to be different from one culture to another. For example, when I communicate with people from Australia, I would usually just tell them by their names. Okay, for example, dear Eric, or dear, you know, let us say, for example, John. But here in the UAE, when I address other people in my email, I would always, for example, include their title. Okay, and of course, a certain line expressing about how they are, how are you. I'm not going to be, you know, going to the main point of the topic for that particular email. There are different nuances. There are different considerations that you need to understand when you are emailing people from different cultures, especially here in the UAE. I don't know your experience, but since I've always written emails to different people from different countries, so I would write differently from to one country, the content, the way, the tone of my email to another. But always remember this: you are being trained to become leaders. So always be on top of conversation, just as what I mentioned earlier. Avoid being apologetic with, because you have not done anything about it. I've seen this in many mails coming from Asian people, including myself when I was young. Okay, when you are writing email, don't even think that you're bothering other people. That's part of the professional job. Okay, of being a professional. That's one consideration. But I hope that I could explain this more, probably another session, specifically for email and other parts, other characteristics of intercultural communication. But we'll see if Lincoln will come up with something. Thank you.
Yes, agreed, sir. Intercultural communication is a very vast topic and cannot be covered in such a short time. And of course, emails specifically are very culturally relative, so that is understood. But thank you for the tips that you have given today. Right now, I think Cheryl has a compliment for you in the chat box. If you could just have
Cheryl.
a look.
I'm facing difficulties this past few weeks. Your words are uplifted my spirit. Thank you very much. Okay.
And Hadia as well.
Yeah, very helpful, and you are a great speaker. Thank you very much. I know Cheryl, Hadia, and all the rest. Trust me, in time, you will become better than me. I'm very sure of that. The very fact that you are here, despite of your busy time, the very fact that you continue to pursue, equipping yourself with certain skills, enhancing your talent by, for such a young age, I'm going to be very sure that you'll become better than me or anyone else here at this time.
Right. So I have a question because I was here listening to your lecture. So it might be a silly question, but since you talked about looking at trees, and because they're green and the green color helps to, helps in relaxation and de-stress people. So why is it called the Pomodoro Technique? Because as far as I know, Pomodoros are tomatoes in Italian, and they're
red. I think because, thank you, Sophia. Because, the thing is, probably I was making it fast because of time limitation. I compared the two studies. A Pomodoro Technique, the one mentioned by Sophia, is that make sure that you allocate time in between your activities to help you de-stress or to help, to become not overwhelmed by work. A Pomodoro Technique is like, I usually do it in my class in an ordinary setting. For example, if I have a class or I'm checking papers or I'm writing, a report. And usually a report or probably doing classes would take around 2 hours or 3 hours, let us just say, as an example. Every 25 minutes, I will have a break of 5 minutes. Okay, every 25 minutes, please, I'm addressing you, the ones listening now. If you're doing anything, okay, every 5 minutes, every 25 minutes, you have a break, you stretch, you go for coffee, whatever it is, for 5 minutes. You go to the toilet, etc. Now, and then come back again for another 25 minutes, and then break again for 5 minutes, and then come back again for 25 minutes. And then the third, for some, they go up to 25 minutes, they go for stronger break. And the reason for that is brain retention and recovery, okay? Which means that you absorb information better, you function better because you've allowed your brain to have a break. Remember this, your brain is a machine. And if you overwork your machine, it will break down. So calibrate it. Calibrate every 25 minutes. That is the Pomodoro Technique. And one example of the gap, meaning to say the break of 5 minutes, probably around 2 minutes or 3 minutes, you look at the trees. That's what I was trying to say. So that's one technique wherein you combine the two together to have a very effective result.
Right.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I've understood it now.
I know I've combined them.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Okay.
So if there are no more questions from any of our attendees, I think we can end the session here. So Raisa, if Raisa is here, can she just do the customary displays on our screen? Thank you, Dr. Rex, for all the, once again, a lot of valuable knowledge and a lot of information that we can use not only professionally, but definitely even in our personal lives. Thank you so much. It was wonderful having you, and we hope to continue to collaborate with you on all of these wonderful events. Thank you so much, sir.
Anytime, Supriya, and thank you very much. You've always been very, very supportive, a really, really excellent workplace. And I know that you've given excellent value to the students as well. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So to all our attendees, please make sure that you visit our website, www.lincoln-edu.ae. And have a look at the range of courses that we offer. Please make sure that you find one of your choice and register. You will get AED 500 off on your total fees. It's a really good offer. Make the best of that. Please join us again next weekend, 15th and 16th of April, with another very, very informative session, which we will be having on enhancing IT and Excel skills. Very important when you're returning to the workplace. So please make sure you join us. For now, it is a wrap from Lincoln University of Business and Management. Have a great weekend. Bye, everyone.